Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror film from the UK, English language, released in the year 2018, directed by Jeremy Dyson and Andy Nyman, and this film is called Ghost Stories. So Ghost Stories is about this man. He is a presenter in this TV show that specialises in debunking myths, debunking con men, and basically saying to the rest of the world that the paranormal afterlife doesn't exist. And so he goes out of his way to set up these psychics, and at the start of the film, this psychic is going through his show. He's telling the audience that he can communicate with their loved ones that have since deceased, but this man has actually set it up so he's going to confront these psychics on stage and say, what the hell are you doing? And so this is what he does for a living, and he's been inspired by a man in the 70s who did the same sort of thing. But mysteriously, this man disappeared. Hasn't been seen for many, many years. And so this presenter, his hero, although he has disappeared, he still wants to continue his work. But then all of a sudden, this man's disbelief at the paranormal is going to be put under the microscope when he gets a letter from his hero saying that he actually sought refuge at a caravan park, and he has basically stopped doing what he did for a very specific reason, and he wants to explain that reason. And so when this presenter goes to the caravan park, this man tells him that he come across 3 paranormal encounters, 3 stories that he hadn't been able to disprove. And because he hasn't been able to disprove it, this is why he stopped doing what he was doing. He believed that he had a lot of shame, that he had no right in order to basically throw away everyone's hope that you can communicate with the dead. And this is the reason why he has a lot of animosity, not only towards his own work, but also the work of this current presenter. So he tells the presenter, if you can disprove that these 3 encounters were real, then good luck to you, but he can guarantee that he's going to look at the paranormal in a different light, because this is definitely going to change him. And so whether or not it does is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Ghost Stories. This movie didn't come onto my radar until very, very late, and I don't know whether or not that's just poor marketing from the Australian distribution, or in fact it's just a movie that has just gone under the radar. That's a very quiet sort of film. So I'm a massive fan of British horror films, and I'm a massive fan of Andy Nyman, who was the co-director and also the main star of the film, and also Martin Freeman. Now Martin Freeman, ever since he was in Ricky Gervais' The Office, he really made a name for himself. He was on The Hobbit, he was off a whole host of other films, Shaun of the Dead, and so these are movies that that have actually thrown into an international market. And so Martin Freeman is definitely the draw card of this film. He's on the cover of the Australian release, so obviously having a familiar face is going to entice people to watch the movie. And so a lot of people have actually given this film praise, saying it was one of the best British horror films out in recent memory. And so on one side I was very happy about hearing that a British horror film was coming out, but on the other side I was skeptical as to, this is a movie that has a lot of hype, it has a lot of recognition, but how come I hadn't heard of it before? And so I had that skepticism that maybe it wouldn't be as good as I was hoping, but I was banking on the fact that a lot of other people were saying it was a masterpiece. And so I had the hope that it was going to be a great film, but I had the skepticism that weighed back that hope to some degree to give the film every possible opportunity to impress me. And at the end of the day, I will say that it's not a terrible film, but it's not the masterpiece a lot of people say it is, because it's confined to a level of safety that makes it a movie definitely for television as opposed to top-tier British cinema. And that's something I'll go into a little bit later, but what I liked about the film is that, yes, it is a paranormal ghost film, but the paranormal entity and the paranormal qualities of the movie, it evolves to a point where it's grounded in a strong sense of realism, and that realism is being thrust upon this main character played by Andy Nyman. Now Andy Nyman, he's hell-bent on disproving all of this, and it's almost like an obsession of his, and you're constantly asking, why are you so obsessed at debunking these myths that give a lot of people hope? And so I thought, alright, well, is he doing it for reasons that you don't know about? And yes, he is doing it for reasons that you don't know about, and as the movie goes along, you start to know why. And it gives the movie that sense of tragedy that really makes it a very powerful and emotional experience. I had a response to this film that I wasn't really expecting. And so yes, it is a ghost film, and if you go into the movie expecting a typical ghost experience, you might come out of this movie slightly surprised. And so the end of the film, I thought, gives it that sort of unique creative liberty, and a lot of people said the ending was quite bad, and a lot of people say it cheated the audience. I have to be very careful not to give anything away in this experience, so you don't have to worry, I'm not going to do that. But I actually thought the ending, I can see how people would hate it, but I actually thought it, as I said, it does push the envelope in a way where it does form a shadow of its own. And so as I said, it is confined to the limits of safety in the overall value of the film, but I still thought it had that sort of quirky moment at the end of the movie that does warrant warranted a viewing. And so it does step out from the rest of the crowd as far as paranormal horror films are concerned. And so if you go into it expecting a typical ghost film, you might come away from this movie a little bit disappointed. But if you want something that is going to be different in a very tight subgenre, then I definitely think Ghost Stories is worth checking out. It does take 3 stories, and so some people might say it's an anthology, and yes, it does follow an anthology sort of thing where you've got Andy Nyman's character, that is the wraparound story, and you've got 3 separate stories that this man is trying to tell this main presenter is going to change his outlook on the paranormal. And I thought these paranormal stories, although they were very, very short, I still thought there were moments where I would have liked it a little bit longer, but they were effective in what they were doing, and each story I thought played a pivotal role into actually snowballing up until the ending. And so I thought these stories, they were very well told. As far as horror is concerned, the directors, Jeremy Dyson and Andy Nyman, they know what they're doing as far as setting a horror platform. And when they execute that platform, I thought, alright, well, some of it was actually quite decent. A bit of it was a little bit silly, but I still thought, as I said, the silly quality in the paranormal sort of element of this film, as I said, that strong sense of realism connected to the main character of Andy Nyman, I could forgive that to some degree. But I just thought there were some moments that were very effective, very creepy, but there were some moments that were obvious that kind of, it kind of lessened the impact to some degree. And as I said, this is the reason why I had a problem with the film. But I will say the acting, you've got Andy Nyman, who does a great job as the main character. I was a little bit disappointed in Martin Freeman's character. I thought Martin Freeman didn't really have to showcase too much of his ability, and I thought he was definitely there to sell the film. And you've got a whole host of other British actors who do reasonable jobs, but because the stories are very short as far as the paranormal encounters are concerned, they don't really have to elevate themselves. They don't have to push themselves. And unfortunately, that's the problem, is that the movie doesn't push itself in a way where it's overly memorable. And so I thought, alright, well, yes, it is emotional. I thought the soundtrack was very good. It gives it that emotion, but I still thought it felt like a made-for-TV film. It didn't really elevate it to top-tier British cinema. It's not a movie you're going to watch on the cinema screen and you're going to come away from thinking, wow, I've just been absolutely blown away by one of the best British films to come out in recent memory. And so I thought that it had that sort of dull, pedestrian tone that is confined to television horror films. And as far as horror TV, made-for-TV horror films are concerned, I think Ghost Stories is definitely one I would check out. But as I said, that confine on safety, the confines of safety does limit the film to some degree. It doesn't really spread its wings out as much as I really wanted it to, because I still thought it had a little bit more potential than it actually executes. And so the execution was fairly decent, but I just thought that it was going through the motions to some degree. It wasn't utilising all of the potential that the film had, and so it just becomes a movie that you are going to be glad that you saw, but you're not necessarily going to remember it in the next few days. And so it's not the masterpiece a lot of people said it say it is, but who knows, maybe you'll go out there and you'll enjoy it a lot more than I did. But I still thought it was worth the time and effort, and that's why I'm going to recommend it. I'm going to give Ghost Stories 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.